The anime begins with showing a young man who is dying. At that moment, many people around him make fun of him, including a prince. Before killing the young man, the prince lets him try to attack him using magic for one last time. After that, the young man tries to use magic against the prince, but his magic, it's not strong enough to even burn the prince's clothes. Seeing this, the prince arrogantly says that regular people can't have strong magic, because being born into a powerful family is more important than anything else. Even if someone works very hard to learn magic, if they don't come from a powerful wizard family, they won't be able to become great wizards. After that, it was the prince's turn to use his magic against the young man. Immediately, the young man screamed in pain as the prince's magic covered him in fire. But instead of feeling pain, the young man smiled, amazed by how powerful the nobleman's magic was. The intense heat and pain felt wonderful to him. In his last moments, the young man hoped that if he had the chance, he could learn more about magic and become as skilled as the prince. In the end, the young man turned into ashes. Unexpectedly, the young man woke up surrounded by beautiful maids while holding toys. At that moment, they seemed happy and friendly towards him. At first, the young man thought that they were scary giants, so he used a magic to protect himself from the maids. But when he saw his small hands, he was surprised. Also, the magic he used was incredibly strong, so strong that it destroyed the walls of his castle room. At the same time, outside the palace, there were celebrations for his birthday. It turned out that the young man had been reincarnated as the 7th prince of King Solomon. All the citizens were very happy to have their new prince. Meanwhile, the young man was trying to understand that he had come back to life as a prince, feeling shocked by this news. Several years later, life in the kingdom seemed normal. But inside the palace, the maids were confused and looking for the 7th prince. They searched everywhere, but couldn't find him. It turns out, Lloyd, the 7th prince, intentionally avoided the maids. While trying to stay hidden, he met 2 palace officials. Quickly, Lloyd asked them to keep his whereabouts secret, so the maids wouldn't find him. One of the officials, unaware of Lloyd's reasons, invited him to go hunting with them, but Lloyd had already left. After that, the other official suggested ignoring Lloyd because he was the 7th prince and unlikely to become king, so being associated with him was pointless. However, the man argued that Lloyd was special, because he was born he could speak and read books. Lloyd even had strong magic that capable of destroying a castle. The man suspected that Lloyd might be the reincarnation of the famous wizard, William Bordeaux. But his companion thought this idea was ridiculous. On the other hand, Lloyd remembered everything from his past life. But he struggled with being reborn as a prince, considering he came from an ordinary people. And just like in his previous life, Lloyd didn't care about titles or wealth, because he only wanted to learn more about magic. As he lived in a castle, Lloyd enjoyed having access to many magical books, even more than he had at his old magic school. When Lloyd was about to start reading one of the books, his teachers named Silpha grabbed the book from him. Silpha was annoyed because Lloyd always ran away, so she immediately took Lloyd for sword training. Unexpectedly, Lloyd was good at sword fighting, almost as good as Silpha, but eventually she was better than him. Lloyd then asked why he needed to learn sword fighting since he was the 7th prince and wouldn't become king. Upon hearing this, Silpha replied that being good at self-defense was important for nobles, no matter if they would be king or not. For the last 3 years, Silpha has been teaching Lloyd martial arts, focusing on improving his fighting skills. She wants Lloyd to become proficient at martial arts. During their training, Lloyd started showing his magic skills too. While they practiced with swords, Silpha noticed Lloyd was getting stronger. But she didn't know that Lloyd was using magic to copy her moves, although he felt unsure if it was fair. However, Lloyd was eager to finish training and go back to reading books, so he kept going. Even though Lloyd was different from Silpha in size, he eventually lost to her. After that, Lloyd secretly used magic to make his sword longer and his hands stronger. He also used magic to fly like Silpha. Feeling more confident with his new skills, Lloyd attacked one last time. But Silpha saw through his tricks and beat him quickly. Even though Lloyd cheated, Silpha was actually happy because Lloyd could use complex magic, like extending his sword. Silpha fell even more in love with Lloyd because he could use 2 magic spells at once, which was better than the wizards in the palace. When Lloyd realized that Silpha had only noticed 2 of his magic spells, he felt relieved even though he used 4 at once. After their training, Lloyd joined Silpha and her servants for a bath, but he didn't seem happy and said he wanted to bathe alone. Silpha didn't allow it, because she was worried he would skip bathing to read books in the library. Shortly after, the servants warned Lloyd about a demon that supposedly lived in the library and said bad things would happen if he didn't listen. Unfortunately, hearing about the forbidden library and the demon made Lloyd even more curious. Silpha then told the story of how the kingdom of Salem was almost destroyed by demons, and many wizards died trying to trap the bad one in a book called Grimr. She said the book was in the castle's underground library, and nobody was allowed to go there. Even though Silpha said it was just a story and Lloyd, as a prince, shouldn't be scared, Lloyd started to tremble, which made Silpha and the helpers think he was scared. The servants asked Lloyd to sleep in their room if he felt scared. However, Silpha refused and insisted that Lloyd could only sleep with her. In the end, the girls started their commotion. Realizing the opportunity, Lloyd quietly left the area. It turns out he wasn't scared, but he was excited to find out about the forbidden library in the castle. That night, Lloyd immediately went to find the secret room. He then used magic to make himself invisible so the guards wouldn't see him. When he about to enter the underground room, Lloyd overheard the guards talking and found out that the forbidden library had magic that could cause trouble for the whole kingdom, and there was a powerful demon sealed inside. The guards were confident that the entrance to the library was really strong, sealed by the 10 most powerful wizards, so nobody could get in. But Lloyd could easily open it and went inside. At that moment, he was amazed by all the old magic books that he had never seen before. He even regretted for not knowing about this part of the castle before. Lloyd then started reading lots of books, where suddenly one book floated in the air and started laughing. At the same time, the demon trapped in the book, called Grim, appeared, and Lloyd remembered hearing about Grim from the servants. Impressed that Lloyd could open the sealed door, Grim asked him to free himself from the book, where Grim promised Lloyd lots of money if he helped him. But Lloyd didn't believe him immediately because he knew the gold that Grim showed was fake, which made by magic that Lloyd could also do. After Lloyd exposed his trick, Grim was panicked. At the same time, Lloyd said he would seal the library again once he finished reading the books to make sure dangerous things like Grim couldn't harm the kingdom. At that moment, Grim tried to convince Lloyd that he wasn't dangerous anymore because he had been trapped for many years. Grim also promised he wouldn't do bad things if Lloyd let him go. But Lloyd still didn't trust Grim and was unwilling to release Grim. Seeing Lloyd wouldn't change his mind, Grim got more desperate. He then offered to teach Lloyd ancient magic that nobody knew anymore if Lloyd let him go. Lloyd, who was loved magic, immediately became interested. Additionally, Grim also praised Lloyd for his extraordinary magic talent, which made Lloyd even more curious. In the end, Lloyd couldn't resist and broke Grim's seal. Unexpectedly, Grim didn't keep his promise. Instead, he attacked Lloyd with ancient magic, trying to kill him. Surprisingly, Grim's magic didn't work because Lloyd made a strong barrier. Even though Grim attacked him unexpectedly, Lloyd wasn't shocked. He actually thought Grim's ancient magic was really impressive, and Lloyd wanted Grim to show him more. After that, Grim attacked Lloyd again with all his power, but Lloyd was not injured and instead analyzed Grim's magic. After that, Lloyd wanted to understand Grim's magic better, so he let Grim attack him directly. Lloyd hurt his fingers, but he was still amazed by Grim's magic. He said Grim's magic was painful, but also beautiful. After that, Lloyd asked Grim to show him more of his magic skills. Upon hearing this, Grim felt offended with the request and got angry. He made 2 heads appear and then used his strongest attack. This time, Grim combined 2 spells into 1. But once again, Lloyd wasn't affected. Instead, he was even more impressed by Grim's magic. Then, Lloyd made lots of barrier spells. Upon seeing this, Grim thought Lloyd was trying to trap him, but Lloyd said he was actually protecting the castle and everything inside it. When Lloyd cast the spells, nothing happened to the castle above. Lloyd then explained that he was scared because when he was a baby, he accidentally destroyed a castle. After talking, Lloyd challenged Grim to show how good he was at defending himself. But with just one attack, Lloyd shattered Grim's defensive magic. Grim was surprised because Lloyd was still a child. Additionally, he was amazed by Lloyd's magic that fixed the broken things in the library. Grim was so impressed that he called Lloyd as master, while Lloyd just realized that demons like Grim couldn't be killed using magic. Therefore, Lloyd intended to use Grim to test all kinds of magic he possessed. Upon hearing this, Grim got scared and immediately admitted defeat and vowed to become Lloyd's subordinate. Hearing this, Lloyd agreed and told Grim to change into a different form so people wouldn't notice him. Worried that Grim's real form might scare people, Lloyd suggested Grim turn into a cute little goat. But Grim had a secret plan. He wanted to use his cute look to catch Lloyd off guard. However, Lloyd was too strong for Grim's tricks. Lloyd's strong magic made him immune to Grim's tricks again. In the end, Grim had to give up and do what Lloyd said. The next day, at the castle, Lloyd and Grim were together when Lloyd's brother named Albert came to the castle unexpectedly. Fortunately, Lloyd already knew Albert was coming and told Grim to hide. At that moment, Albert wanted Lloyd to practice magic with him, which Lloyd was happy to do because he loved magic. Albert was the second prince of King Solomon, and he could become king if something happened to the first prince, or if he showed he couldn't rule well. Additionally, Albert is good-looking and smart, which makes people support him for the throne. He often asks Lloyd to practice magic with him. After Albert finished practicing his magic, he immediately told Lloyd to practice next. Lloyd was happy to use magic in the castle, but he didn't want to show off too much. He worried that if people knew how strong his magic was, they might want him to be king. This time, Lloyd used rotational magic along with his fireball spell, making the fireball move in a curved path and hit its target. Unexpectedly, Lloyd's trick succeeded, but he intentionally touched the target lightly to avoid drawing too much attention. However, Albert's guards thought Lloyd's magic was normal and needed improvement. Upon hearing this, Grim was annoyed that Lloyd's skills weren't appreciated, but Lloyd didn't mind. After that, Albert asked Lloyd to take a break while he practiced alone. Upon hearing this, Lloyd was happy to be alone, because he could try new magic freely. Lloyd actually wanted to learn Grim's dual magic spell from yesterday. But according to Grim, that magic couldn't be performed by Lloyd, because if he were to cast a dual spell, he would need 2 mouths to utter the incantation, and only Demon could do that. However, Lloyd found a way for Grim to help him by keeping Grim in his right hand to say the magic words together. When Grim tried to utter the dual incantation, Grim was surprised because there were so many incantations recited by Lloyd. Eventually, Grim couldn't keep up with the incantations that Lloyd wanted to cast. However, Lloyd had another idea, until Lloyd could speak through Grim's mouth, now able to speak with 2 mouths simultaneously. The mechanism of Lloyd's trick was similar to Grim's using 2 heads. With everything ready, Lloyd started casting 2 spells at once. Upon seeing this, Grim was amazed again by how strong Lloyd's magic was, realizing it was really powerful. What's more, each spell Lloyd spoke was different. When the spells combined, a powerful magical force formed. After that, Grim looked scared, but Lloyd stayed calm and focused. When the spells fully combined, a huge burst of magic shot up into the sky, surprising everyone in the kingdom. Meanwhile, inside the castle, Albert, who had been resting, was asked by his servants why he was so interested in Lloyd. Upon hearing this, Albert explained that he saw Lloyd was incredibly good at magic and believed he would become a great sage wizard. Albert's servants understood what he meant. They knew that if Albert became king, he would need Lloyd's help. After that, they were surprised to see a sudden change in the sky, even though it was daytime. They didn't know that Lloyd's magic had caused this, breaking through the sky and making it visible to everyone outside. When Lloyd realized what he had done, he got panicked and quickly stopped his magic, thankfully returning the sky above the castle to normal. The next day, Grim showed Lloyd a newspaper article about the sky-changing event from the day before. As Lloyd read the newspaper, he saw a story about an A-rank adventurer who had successfully explored a difficult dungeon, finding lots of treasure and mythical items. After that, Lloyd wanted to explore the dungeon, but Grim reminded him that he was the 7th prince, so he couldn't go. However, Lloyd had an idea. He then used a magic seed and his special words to make a copy of himself that looked just like him. At that moment, Grim was amazed at how much the copy looked like Lloyd, and it could even move and dance. Grim thought the copy could fool everyone, but Lloyd was worried about Sylpha. Even though others might be fooled by his replica, he didn't think she'd be tricked because she knew him so well. However, Lloyd had another plan. He then put Grim's thoughts into the copy, so it could act and think just like a real person. After that, Lloyd went straight to the dungeon. While Lloyd was away, Grim, inside the copy, pretended to be Lloyd. Even though they were apart, they kept in touch through Lloyd's right hand. At first, Grim thought about doing bad things while pretending to be Lloyd. But when he remembered how much Lloyd relied on him, he immediately abandoned his intention. Shortly after, Lloyd seemed confused while looking for the dungeon. Then he saw a girl being chased by a group of orcs. Lloyd was amazed when the girl easily defeated the orcs using a special breathing technique called ki. Lloyd had read about this technique in a book before, which let the user use powerful energy all over their body. Unexpectedly, the girl noticed Lloyd watching her and spoke to him. At the same time, Lloyd was also interested in learning about Key and the dungeon. But Grimm immediately warned Lloyd not to reveal he was the seventh prince, worried about what might happen. After that, the girl came closer to Lloyd. Luckily, Lloyd had already changed how he looked, making himself taller and more handsome. He introduced himself as Robert, a new adventurer. Lloyd unexpectedly used magic to make himself look like Albert. By mixing his own appearance with Albert's, Lloyd became Robert. When the girl saw Robert, she blushed, showing she was interested in him. After that, she introduced herself as Tao, saying she was a rank B adventurer. On the other hand, Tao started to like Lloyd when he was pretending to be Robert, and decided she wanted to make him like her too. At the same time, Lloyd suggested they explore the dungeon together, and they went in right away. While they were in the dungeon, Tao showed how good she was at fighting while Lloyd looked for crystals. After they'd been exploring for a while, they stopped to eat. At that moment, Tao was surprised that Lloyd knew about the key breathing technique and tried it immediately. But when Lloyd tried it, he started coughing, showing he didn't know it well. Still, Tao thought it was impressive that Lloyd could copy her technique, even though it could be dangerous if not done right, as the user's lungs would burn and explode. But Lloyd wasn't afraid. He was determined to learn the technique because he knew it could make his magic stronger. Seeing how determined he was, Tao decided to teach him the key technique. On the other hand, Sofa ran into Grimm while pretending to be Lloyd, which made Grimm a little worried. Meanwhile, Lloyd managed to defeat the dungeon boss and got a treasure chest as a prize. At that moment, Tao thought Lloyd was doing really well with the key technique. But when they opened the chest, they set off a trap, where Lloyd quickly saved Tao from danger. From inside the chest emerged a skull monster named Leech, which made Lloyd excited to fight a new dungeon boss. But then Tao used her key technique to send Lloyd out of the dungeon, because she wanted to face Leech alone to keep Robert safe. At the same time, Lloyd was confused why Tao threw him away and surprised to see Grimm looking panicked, even though he was in the castle. Meanwhile, Tao was fighting against the strong Leech. What surprised her was that Leech knew about Tao's use of the key technique, which was unusual for a monster. It seemed like Leech had eaten humans before to get their strength and had learned about the key technique that way. At that moment, Leech didn't think much of the key technique and was more interested in Lloyd, who had managed to avoid his surprise attacks earlier. After that, Tao kept using her key technique to fight Leech, even though he put up a barrier to defend himself. However, Tao continued to attack the barrier, as her main worry was keeping Robert safe from harm. In the end, Tao managed to break through Leech's barrier, but Tao had exerted all her strength. After that, she became weak and unable to move. Meanwhile, Leech was still fine and ready to use magic to defeat Tao. Luckily, Lloyd arrived and took over the fight. He tried to use his magic along with his key techniques against Leech, but even though he tried hard, Lloyd couldn't keep up with Leech's constant attacks. Eventually, Lloyd realized he needed more air to do the key breathing technique properly. So he got rid of his protective magic, leaving himself open to Leech's attacks. But Lloyd managed to combine the two techniques and started fighting back against Leech. Leech tried to defend himself with a spell, but it didn't work because Lloyd had mastered the combined key and magic technique. Eventually, Lloyd broke through Leech's protected defense in his body, which resulting in his demise. After the fight, Lloyd and Tao looked through the treasure chest and only found an old knife. At that moment, Tao seemed disappointed, but Lloyd thought there might be something special about it. As the dungeon started to collapse, they quickly got out, with Lloyd carrying the treasure chest. Worried about Grimm, Lloyd decided it was the time to go back home. Before he left, Tao promised to train even harder, hoping to convince Lloyd to be her boyfriend. But Lloyd seemed confused by her words and just encouraged her instead. In the end, they both agreed to train even harder. When Lloyd got home, he found Grimm looking beaten up. It turns out, Sofa had been training with Grimm, but didn't know it was actually Grimm pretending to be Lloyd, so she got mad thinking Lloyd was getting weak suddenly. After comforted Grimm, Lloyd looked at the knife he got from the dungeon. Unexpectedly, the knife contained a strengthening spell inscription. This magic spell was usually used to enhance the strength and durability of weapons. Upon knowing this, Lloyd was excited to study this magic using the spell on the knife. When he looked at it more closely, he found out that the spell needed special things like silver, oil, and powder from monsters' cores. At first, Grimm didn't know how they'd get the powder because it was rare. But luckily, they could get it from the treasure chest Lloyd brought earlier. And now they just needed to find silver and oil. After that, Lloyd quickly went to his father and got the silver he needed. With all the things they required, he trained the sword with Silpha, and this time he didn't hold back his strength. Besides using his sword, Lloyd also used magic during their practice fights. But no matter how hard he tried, Silpha was still better than him. To encourage Lloyd, Silpha made a deal. If he could hit her successfully, she'd give him the oil he needed for their potion. Even though Lloyd lost eventually, Silpha saw he was getting better and still gave him the oil. With both the oil and silver, Lloyd mixed everything together to make the potion he wanted, and it worked. Afterwards, Lloyd quickly went to Albert and asked for the swords he needed to turn into sigil weapons. Upon hearing this, Albert immediately told his guards to get all the swords they had. Not long after, they got 120 swords from Albert, and Lloyd managed to enchant 50 of them with the sigil inscription successfully. Upon seeing this, Albert was amazed by how well Lloyd did. He was also impressed by how bright and shiny Lloyd's swords became, and the anime will be continue. Moral lesson from the story: when faced with tempting offers, it's better to stick to what's right, even if it means missing out on a chance for shiny treasures or cool magic tricks from a goat.